look at ourselves in the mirror, what do we really see? Do we see our reflection? Or do we often see an image projected by our minds? As humans, we believe that we are one of the most evolved beings on earth because we can think. But over the period of time, we have come to realize that our power is not just thinking. Our power is to imagine, to fantasize, and more significantly, fantasize together. We can create stories, we can gossip. In fact, many biologists believe that we began creating language because we wanted to gossip. We wanted to talk about something else. We wanted to talk about things which do not exist. As a group, as a community, we can come together and imagine, fantasize about things which are larger than us and which might never have a physical existence, like our currency system, yeah? Or the money that we use. Through this imagination, we project everything. We create everything around us. We have created the idea of nation, we have created the idea of state, we create systems, we create language, and along with all that, we create an idea of who we should be. We create a projection of what we as individuals should become more than just being ourselves. And this idea of who we are, what we can become, is largely projected by the image of body, of how we look. And it is not limited to us. We enlarge this expectation of being by expecting what others should be too. We have a very solid idea, projection in our minds of how somebody else should be like. Right? That is the most common thing that we do. Often, we are more engaged in assuming some other role, being something else. And in this process, what we do is pay more attention to our minds and simply forget to take experiences. We forget our sensuality. We forget to see with our eyes. We forget to hear with our ears. Everything becomes a mind game. It is so common today when we look at Swiggy or Zomato, we look at food and we decide what should taste good, whereas food should be tasted. We have totally confused our senses in modern times, especially with the advent of social media. And with the advent of social media platforms, our projection of images have become even more dogmatic, right? When I began studying Indian art history and aesthetics, I came across some very fascinating ideas, and I realized that it is a very new idea that we project our images. I came across a very interesting theory called rasa. In this theory, we are taught that bhayanaka rasa or bibhatsa rasa, ideas like disgust, ideas like fear, are an equivalent and valid emotional experience along with experience of beauty. Our mind or our feelings, our sensuality is not limited to only one kind of experience. So Shrungara, Bibhatsa, all become equally valid experiences. So when in the history of mankind, when in our culture did we stop seeing with our eyes? When did we start projecting our mind images to see the world around us? When I started looking at different myths that we have, I realized that they never spoke about the idea of good or bad, ugly or beautiful very specifically. We were so easily accepting to different kinds of body types, like Ravana having multiple heads, or a character like Kabanda, which was only a stomach, or Krishna, Rama, Kali, who are legit blue. They're actually described as Meghavarna, the dark-colored cloud of rain. But we paint them as blue, we never found it odd. It was very easily accepted. Or Shiva, who was an ascetic smeared with ashes, had jata. Jata is uncombed hair. And these ideas were attributions, characteristics of the powers that these gods infested. Nobody discussed about their ideals of beauty. Nobody spoke about whether they were good-looking, bad-looking, fat. That was not really the contention. In fact, we were very open to the ideas of monkey gods, like you see here. We have Mahavira, Buddha, who have long earlobes, as you can see, very long arms, or we have image of Buddha with conch-shaped neck, jalanguli or webbed fingers. And all of these body types were very easily accepted because we felt their philosophies and we were not dependent only on what the visuals were. Similarly, we had very, very different looking gods like the pot-bellied elephant-headed Ganesha or Varaha, a form of Vishnu which has head of the wild boar. This too was very easily assimilated in our culture. Sorry. To understand this very wide spectrum of images that we see in our mythology, I came across a very, very interesting definition of art or kala. The word kala comes from the facets of the moon. We see the moon differently from different geographical areas. Sometimes it's a crescent, sometimes it's a half circle, sometimes it's a full circle, sometimes we see no moon. And it is true for everybody who sees that. What the moon that I'm going to see today is a truthful experience for me. But is it the complete image of the moon? It's not. So the image that I see today is true and false at the same time. Let us not call it false or wrong. It is true and untrue at the same time. It is my perspective which is truthful yet not the complete truth. It is satya and mithya, both sides of the same experience. How illuminating is that? Kala, in that aspect, tells us that we can be accepting of many perspectives. We can accept that what we see is true, but what somebody else might see in other part of the world can also be true. And this, in a way, gives a basis of our very, very accepting culture. And in history, we see that this idea of acceptance has helped us to revive, transform our society many times. When the ideas from Vedas or the philosophies from Vedas became complex, we had a revival in the Vedanta period where ideas like Buddhism, Jainism, Charvaks, Ajivakas, Sankhya revived those ideas, rethought the dogmatic philosophies, and transformed the world as we knew it. When these ideas, again over the period of time, gave a very certain, specific, singular path of living, we transformed them again in the first Bhakti movement, sometime in the 6th century CE. And this time, we did it through different saint poets. Poems were written in vernacular languages. People could now interact directly with the gods. These ideas, again, when started becoming very unflexible, we had the second Bhakti movement in the 11th, 12th century, in the medieval times, with number of saint poets writing poetries like Kabir, Surdas, Tukaram, Sant Gyaneshwar, Mirabai, Tulsidas. So when Kabir says, "Lalan mere lal ki jith dekhu tit lal, lalan dekhan main gayi aur khud ho gayi lal," he is talking about an experience. He's talking about an idea of experiencing redness, of becoming one with your beloved. Or when Khusro says, "Chhap tilak sab chini, to se naina milai ke," he's talking about losing identity when you see the vision of your beloved. Nowhere in these descriptions are these people talking about the physical image of God. They have not predicted a singular idea of beauty. So how did this happen? How did we start deciding what was beautiful and ugly? To understand this, maybe we need to go back to our colonial period. In the 15th, 16th century, when the Europeans came to India, it was a huge cultural shift for them because they had defined their classicism. They had decided an idea of beauty based on mimesis or imitating reality. We are in no place to say whether they were right or wrong. But today we surely understand that their intervention was very detrimental for our culture. Because suddenly our cultural transformations, which we see in history, where we revive ourselves, came to a still. We started following their idea of classicism. And this became even more complex because they penetrated our education systems, they penetrated our ways of life, and they transformed the way we thought. You can see this is how they have documented our gods. For them, our lifestyles were crude, our gods were uncouth, we were very different, weird people. They couldn't take the amount of variety we had. And that slowly started penetrating our system. Eventually, this kind of art began to be taught in our colleges, and this is a standard in a way which has also become part of our thinking process. Men who are broad shouldered, dark, tall, who don't express their feelings, who are very, very stoic in nature. Women who are petite, fair, shy, coy, and are not bold or strong like the images of Kali that we see. Somehow, in this whole process, we started following a very singular idea of beauty. What you see here is the Abhisarika Naika. She is the bold one. She's not afraid of anybody. You can see that she's braving the snake and she's not afraid of the night against an image which comes after the colonial impact where the Naika is very shy. She's not that bold. Or gods too, or males too, were depicted in a very singular fashion. Today, we are bombarded with these stereotyped images around us. We see a stereotype idea of beauty, and we are so used to it that when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we don't see our reflection, we see what we are not. We are trying to look at these images and identify with them. And in order to avoid our own awkwardness, what we do is we start projecting these ideas on others and start body shaming them. That is not the way of life. That is not how we were. How did we stop being so unaccepting? How did we stop looking at the world through our culture? How did we stop looking at the moon and stop realizing that the moon could be real for many people? My crescent moon could be a full moon for somebody else, and both the points could be valid. It is time to lift the veil from our eyes and be open to multiple perspectives. It is time, finally, guys, to see the world as it is, to believe in your sensuality, and not see what your mind shows. Thank you.